do is at the state level. We need to think about how can we make in this laboratories of competition that we have in this federalist system in the United States, we can look at how institutions matter at the state level. So why not look at those states? So the four largest states in the United States are California being number one in terms of population and economic output, then Texas, and then Florida and New York kind of trade off sometimes. But there's another measure called the economic freedom of North America, kind of like the world, which looks at taxation, government spending, and regulation. And Texas in 2000 ranked third, so the red is what these were in 2000 where they ranked, and the blue is what they ranked currently with 2015 data. Texas and Florida ranked the second most free in the nation, whereas California and New York ranked near the last, right? New York ranking least free, California second to least free. So it kind of gives us large populations to look at for a more standard, consistent comparison, right? To see how these diametrically opposing sort of viewpoints on economic policy, how those might affect the economy. And that's what I've shown here. There's a lot of numbers, and I know Pete can share this slide deck with you later on. But basic economic freedom at the top. The blues are those areas of each of these economic measures that rank the best, right? And in red are the ones that rank the worst. For example, New York ranks the worst in economic freedom, and Texas and Florida both tied at second best. If you look at the employment to population ratio for 25 to 54-year-olds, so you get rid of the 16 to 24-year-olds who have been fluctuating in the economy, and you also look at the baby boomers who are retiring, some of them are contributing to why the employment to population ratio across the U.S. is still at 30-year lows, okay? If you take those out, Texas and Florida are neck and neck, 77.3% in Texas, 77.5% in Florida. California has the lowest of these, 75.2%. If you look at just the last 10 years, so since December 2007, when the last national recession started, and look at civilian employment growth, here's what happened if you take U.S. minus Texas. There was a huge drop in the number of people that were employed across the U.S. with about 8.5 million jobs. Okay? But if you just look at Texas over that period, Texas actually never went negative. We didn't have the bust from the housing bubble like many other states did across the United States. And in fact, the rest of the United States didn't pass Texas until January of 2015. Right? 7 years after the recession started, 6 years after the recession ended, that Texas continued to lead the way in job creation, where today, the latest numbers that just came out last week, Texas created 23% of all new jobs created nationwide. 1 out of every 4 jobs in a state that has less than 10% of the population, like 9% of the population. It's been quite fascinating what's really happened in Texas compared to many other places. And even if you look at income inequality metrics, top 10% income shares, Texas has the lower out of all of these, where New York has the highest at 57.1%. So even though California, which has the highest top income tax rate in the nation at 13.3%, to sort of redistribute income, they continue to have pretty high levels of income inequality, at least measured by the top 10% income levels, which is what Thomas Piketty uses pretty often. And even in supplemental poverty, a lot of times we'll hear Texas has a high level of poverty, but if you actually break it down for the cost of living, the Census Bureau looks at the supplemental poverty measure, and Texas is right at the national average, 14.7%, whereas California is the highest, 20.4%. So I think there's something that we need to look at and learn from the lessons of how states work. Texas created 377,100 net non-farm jobs in the last 12 months, which is the most. We've got an average annual growth rate of employment of 3.1% over the last 12 months, and California is at 2%. Okay? I think part of that is also from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. You know how they capped out the deductions, state and local tax deductions at $10,000, and so what we've seen is there's been some movement as more capital has went to places like Texas that has lower relative taxation and places with high taxation. And that's shown by a lot of these metrics for job creation. Here's the unemployment rates over time. So Texas is here in the dark red. We've had an unemployment rate, which is currently 4%, added below 5%, which many economists consider to be full employment, for 48 straight months, for 4 straight years. Quite fascinating. California is now at 4.2%. So they're pretty close with us, but they've had an unemployment rate average below 5% for only a year. It's taken much. They're also hit a lot harder, right? Here's California during the housing boom and bust period. The prime age working year is kind of an average of those. We kind of went through that. Texas has a pretty diversified economy, and so another thing that I want to just mention here is how institutions matter. We have a free trade agreement amongst all the states. So I'm going to get into NAFTA here in a minute, right? There's free trade among all the states, which allows for more economic growth. And for some reason, we don't want that with other countries. We'll get back to that. But Texas is a diversified economy, right? We've been able to expand in a lot of areas. Oil and gas is only about 1.9% of our overall labor force. It's about 10% of our overall private economy. So there's a lot of growth in a lot of other areas like trade in general, trade, transit, and utilities, transportation utilities, professional business services. If you look at cities, major cities, Houston is leading the way here in 2018, and oil prices are back up to about $70 a barrel. That's helped, right? But across, look at Austin, Dallas, Fort Worth a little bit slower, San Antonio slowing down, but it's really quite a bit of job creation across the state. There's income inequality we just talked about. So, but I would argue is the American dream is not dead, it's just simply moved to the Lone Star State, right? There's a lot of things that Texas is doing right, but Texas still has challenges, and a lot of challenges, and those are a lot of things that we're working on, a lot of the foundation of how can we improve some of these areas. One thing that we're working on is maybe eliminating property taxes, especially the school portion, because it's already a state-run school system. Don't change the distribution of it, but change the way you fund it by maybe using state surplus dollars over time to buy the property tax rate down until it goes to zero. That would eliminate half the property tax burden in Texas. There's other ways to do that as well. Education, there needs to be something done. Government spending, accountability, self-governance. That's really what we call the Texas Prosperity Promise. Those 5 main issues that we're going to be working on during the next session. We have a whole campaign, a website called the Texas Prosperity Promise, where we can share information if you're willing to look at something along those lines. Kind of speed up a little bit. So in the state, and we get into NAFTA, but I think it's important to look at how institutions matter at the federal, state, and then what's happening with these institutions as well, with international trade. But when you look at the state, there is we consider a state spending problem. When you measure the overall state budget, we have a 2-year budget cycle in the state. It's about $217 billion over that 2-year period, okay? And if you measure it and compare it with some sort of metrics like population growth and inflation, 2 common metrics that are used, going back to 04-05, we were spending $124 billion a year. If you increase the budget each period by population and inflation, we would be spending $202 billion. Instead, we're spending $217 billion. So what does that mean? In this 2-year budget cycle, we're spending $15 billion more than we otherwise could be, just based on population growth and inflation. And if you break that down to a family of 4, that means a family of 4 is paying $1,000 more in state taxes just this year than they otherwise would. So something that we need to look at. Local spending problem. Local governments have also been spending quite a bit. So that's something else to look at. These are property taxes. I know it's too small for you to see right now, but there's special purpose districts, counties, cities, school districts, and total property taxes each year. They grow on average about 6.3%. And so there's now some discussion about how much they should grow by, because that means it's an increase in you, and again, it's coming from spending. Spending drives taxation. And one of the main things I hear from Chamber of Commerce across the state is that property tax is one of the major impediments to growing their businesses. The other one being the workforce. Those are really the 2 key areas. We rank 6th most burdensome property tax system in the nation, if you look just at Texas. So there's different ways to think about it. Texas education should just be spent more wisely overall. Really look at where each one of those dollars are going. Talked about this already, but you can limit spending to 4%. We can use the state surplus dollars to buy down property taxes each period until half of it's eliminated, which we calculate to take about 11 years. There's also been some talk about maybe a tax swap. Get rid of half the property taxes and expand the base for the sales tax, right? And if you did that, you could get right around 9.7% sales tax rate from the 8.25 to a 9.7, but you would eliminate half the property tax in Texas. Different options. I mean, this is a major obstacle that's out there right now. There's also been talk about capping or having a trigger for property tax growth at 2.5%. And there's many options that are out there. And I'm going to go from there. So how can we make America look like Texas? Well, there are a lot of ways. Looking at energy, healthcare, regulation, making sure taxes stay low, which we got to focus on government spending, and make sure that debt doesn't get out of control, which it seems to be doing pretty quickly. So ultimately then, institutions do matter, and one of those is trade, right? Which is why we're here today. When you look at NAFTA, there's been so much noise, just like today when Pete was talking about the press release about NAFTA, you never know from one day to the next, or which tweet is going to come out next, or what's happening with trade. And so whenever I look at trade, and this is in that paper, People Prosper from Prosperity, that's out there on the desk, many of you have. It's also on our website, texaspolicy.com. But trade is really between people. I always break it down to just individuals. We trade because we mutually benefit, right? If we didn't mutually benefit, we would not trade together. What time am I done here? I see a time here.
You got 5 more minutes.
Okay, 5 more minutes. But trade is between individuals, and so we've got to make sure that we break it down to that level. That's how prosperity happens. And even between countries, we need to think about these are individuals. It's not the United States trading with Mexico. It's Americans trading with Mexicans, right? And Mexicans trading with Canadians. We get lost on that many times. I don't know how to build a car. I don't want to know how to build a car. I know how to teach and do some economics and provide services that way. And so it allows for us to have division of labor and specialization. And think about the competitive advantages that we have. I mean, Mexico, when you look at, or NAFTA, when you look at it, has brought about more and more jobs over time. Across the United States, they show about 14 million jobs have been supported by NAFTA alone. Just 5 million over the last decade. And Texas continues to benefit from NAFTA as well. We have about $228 billion in total trade between Mexico and Canada. We actually have a surplus between these countries of $12 billion just here in Texas, right? Whenever I look at trade, I don't think about deficits and surpluses. To me, that matters little, because it's about people that are exchanging. I look at the total volume of trade. For example, for the United States, we trade with other countries to the tune of about $5 trillion, even though we may have a deficit with some of these countries. And with Mexico, we may have a deficit. But let's look at the total trade balance. Because any deficit you have is a current account deficit. When you look at the trade, balance of trade, balance of payments, when you have a deficit, that means you have a current account surplus, meaning financial dollars are flowing into the United States to help to grow an economy and lead to more growth over time. It's helped to diversify our economy here in Texas, which is in that paper, because of the larger market share, or large market that we've been able to reach because of NAFTA. Texas has been the top state for exports for 16 straight years. So the blue line is Texas, it's the rest of the United States. It's been pretty flat. Texas continues to lead the way. And it's not just oil and gas, but you do a lot of trade with Mexico and oil and gas, but it's computer and electronic products that the United States exports to other countries in NAFTA. But it's also tariffs. There's also a lot of talk about tariffs and what's happening with China, what's happening with Turkey and other countries that are out there. What's interesting about the steel tariffs, 25% tariff on steel, is that there are less than 100,000 steel producing jobs across the United States, but there are about 1 million, it's a little more than this one, but 1 million jobs that are still consuming jobs. So what's happened is that the steel tariffs have helped out the steel producers, but it's hurt the steel consumers, and what I would argue, Americans in the process. The Tax Foundation, and I'm wrapping up here, Pete, the Tax Foundation really looks at what are the impact of the Trump tariffs and some of the discussion about NAFTA. What they show that so far, the ones that have been enacted have brought in revenue of about $28 billion, and that's lost jobs of 50,000 jobs across the United States. The threatened tariffs, when you look at auto and auto parts, and the ones that could go on China, which is going to be about $200 billion, they show it to be about $153 billion sort of revenue gain. That's 350,000 job losses. There are opportunity costs to these actions that have taken place. And then there's retaliatory tariffs that China puts on us. And so in total, if you look at total impact of enacted and announced tariffs, it's $175 billion per year. A loss of about 467,000 jobs, $150 billion in economic output that's been reduced. And the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act from last year was a $1.5 trillion tax cut on a static analysis. That's $150 billion a year. If we raise tariffs, which is a tax, by $175 billion, you've actually increased taxes by more than what you cut them. The net tax effect would be a net increase overall. So we're shaving off the amount of economic growth that we could have from the tax cuts that were passed last year. So key takeaways: institutions matter. Let's be efficient with how government and with the roles for government in general. And Frederick Hayek said, the purest task of economics is to demonstrate to men how little they really know about what they can imagine they can design. And John Maynard Keynes, politically opposite, perhaps so many who believe themselves to be quite exempt from any intellectual influence are usually the slaves of some defunct economist. We've really got to be careful. So, starting off in Houston, right, 1981, going through a major car accident, having a loving family and being here with all of you today. Institutions matter. Let's make sure that we strengthen institutions like free trade, like families, and not break them down. That's the way we get more prosperity. So thank you for your time. Have a great day.
As you can see, the importance of understanding the facts is very important when you're making a trade negotiation. I think when you break down and you see where Texas stands on a national level, and you understand where our prosperity comes from, just why can't we mirror that in 49 other states? Well, they have to do more business with Mexico.
Yeah.
We've figured it out here. That's why the U.S.-Mexico Chamber is here. But I like bringing people like Vance up to talk about where we are as a state, because most people that live here and that vote, have the opportunity to vote, don't know exactly where their income comes from. And it's important that they do. And it's important that we have good negotiations. And that's why I took the opportunity to invite Dr. Antonio Ortiz Mena, who is a partner with Stonebridge. It's a consulting company, research company. But Antonio's background as one of the chief negotiators of the original NAFTA is also very important. And his position in the Ministry of Economy in Mexico is also to give you some background on Antonio. Antonio, would you share a little bit? We've seen the Texas kind of point of view. I'd like to see Mexico's point of view and Mexico's point of view on negotiation. Antonio Ortiz Mena.
Well, thank you, Pete, for this introduction, for the invitation to AdLib. Maybe do some group therapy here about NAFTA traumas and frustrations. But just 30-second intro. First of all, again, thank you so much for the invitation. Why did I go to the Greater Houston Partnership first? Because I reserved the best for last, okay? Don't forget about that. And then you mentioned Bob Musbacher. I had the honor of being a member of the original NAFTA team. Had some hair back then, some years ago. But there was another very important Texan that helped push this through, and that's Lloyd Benson. So I did want to mention the late Lloyd Benson, a great statesman, and he's widely respected and remembered in Mexico. So just wanted to mention Lloyd Benson. Now, what is the Mexican perspective? First of all, Mexico realized that NAFTA needed to be updated. As I said, it's an old agreement. There's no e-commerce chapter. It goes, we negotiated from 1990, 1992. I mean, this is ancient history, right? So it badly needed an upgrade, and we actually did it. It's called the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It was done, wrapped as a gift. It was ready, and then the new U.S. government decided it was a bad deal. So we basically started from scratch, and we've been negotiating for about a year now, almost to the day. And the latest news that Pete mentioned is that there could be a bilateral agreement between Mexico and the U.S. What does this mean? So NAFTA has some trilateral components and some bilateral components. In terms of bilateral, it's mostly ag. agriculture. So the deal that could be announced is that Mexico and the U.S. have resolved most of their difficult bilateral issues, and then there's a trilateral issue, which is automobile rules of origin. But the toughest negotiation is that between Mexico and the U.S. So if Mexico and the U.S. can agree on automobiles, Canada can be brought on board. I think that's what could be announced. We still need for the U.S. to resolve its bilateral issues with Canada, and then we need the three amigos, to use that expression, to resolve outstanding trilateral issues, among which are the sunset clause. If the U.S. wants to have a sort of sudden death provision, which entails that after 5 years, NAFTA will no longer be in force unless the three parties agree otherwise, you might have a sunset clause, but you won't have a NAFTA. You cannot have both. So please, 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 if you can speak with someone, explain that. You can have your sudden death, you can have your sunset clause, you can frame it, or you won't have a NAFTA. As simple as that. Then there's a dispute settlement regarding foreign investment. That is extremely important, especially for extractive industries, for the oil and gas sector. That still has to be decided. And then we still need ratification. So even if there's a handshake, and once the lawyers finish brushing up the text and it's presented to the Canadian Parliament, the U.S. House and Senate, and the Mexican Senate, there's still a lot of domestic politics. So we're not home yet, but hopefully we will be there. I believe that NAFTA is critically important for the Mexico-U.S. relationship beyond tariff and non-tariff commitments. I grew up, I guess I can say I'm older than 1981. Let's just say I was born in the 1960s, okay? I'll leave it at that. And I grew up learning not about the Mexican-American War, but about the fact that the U.S. invaded Mexico, that Mexico lost half its territory to the U.S., that the U.S. is not to be trusted, okay? And I was a member of a generation that said, we are blessed by being the neighbors of the U.S. Let's get together, let's work together on trade and investment and combating the bad guys and sharing intel. This is out of enlightened self-interest, and a lot of countries would give anything to be the neighbor of the U.S. So the feeling in Mexico is one of astonishment that after we turned around in terms of a very complicated history, things have been going pretty well for the past quarter century, and suddenly we feel surprised by the U.S. saying, Mexicans cannot be trusted, or Mexicans are bad, or NAFTA's the worst deal. So for me, this gets to be like almost a personal issue. I stake my own reputation, almost my life, in terms of saying we should work together. We are blessed by being neighbors of the U.S. I was born in Mexico. Mi mamá nació en El Paso, Texas. This is the way things are. So I do hope that, especially Texas, speak out in terms of the incredible importance of NAFTA for Texas-Mexico relations and U.S.-Mexico relations. It's much more than trade. It's much more than just an institution. When I was the head of economic affairs at the Mexican embassy, I used to talk a lot about trade. I used to say that Texas sells to Mexico about the same amount that the whole of the U.S., including Texas, sells to China. Just to have an order of magnitude of how important Mexico is to the U.S. and especially to Texas. So hopefully we will have a lot of Texas support, as we did back then with Bob Musbacher and Lloyd Benson and George W. and get this agreement done. But we're still not home yet. Don't let down your guard. Please speak up, as Texans do. Thank you so much.
Antonio, thank you very much. Even though the announcement was made today that they've got an agreement done and still handshake, our job at the U.S.-Mexico Chamber of Commerce continues. Our job is to continue to educate people, to connect people, to help them build their businesses so that they can prosper. We could not do this without our sponsors. We could not do it without the many companies that have sponsored our lunch today. So I want to say thank you to each one of our sponsors, Houston First, United Airlines, of course, one of our founding members, MD Anderson, great institutions here in Houston, Viva Magazine of the Woodlands, Moral Law, one of our advisory board members, and our newest member, Healing for Love or Healing with Love? With Love. With Love. We want to show you a couple of videos here of a little bit about these companies because I think they've got some great things to announce. But before that, I wanted to recognize some of the key parties that are here that have joined us. With the Canadian consulate, works in the one of the trade commissioners. Maria, would you please stand up, Maria? I met Maria. She's in our Houston office, representing Canada. And our dear friend, Ambassador and Consul General of Panama, Ambassador Juan Sosa. Lorena, you're not in office yet, so I'm not sure how to introduce you, but Lorena, please stand up. I want each of you to meet Lorena. She's running for office in District 15, that's up in the north, in the Woodlands area. I hope you will take some time to see what she's about. But I can tell you one of the most important things about Lorena is she wants to bring people together. She wants to bring parties together. She says, I'm of a certain party, but I will represent all of my constituents. I wish more people in Washington would hear that today. Again, we are a non-political, non-partisan, but our job is to educate people on the importance of the economy and how it impacts each one of our families. So could I ask Miguel to get ready? I want to introduce Danielle Palomo. Danielle Palomo is one of the directors at Houston First. They have many jobs at Houston First. So I want to first explain, what does Houston First do, Danielle? Come on.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Daniel Palomo. I'm Director of Global Sales for Visit Houston and Houston First Corporation. So just to tell you a little bit about Houston First. So Houston First merged in 2014 with the Greater Houston Convention and Visitors Bureau. Part of what we do is we manage City of Houston-owned assets, like for instance, Georgia Brown Convention Center, the Hilton Americas, Orphan Center, and many other assets as well. The Convention and Visitors Bureau became a division of Houston First Corporation, and as such, we try to attract meetings, conventions from the domestic market, but also international. We try to attract tourism, government officials, and try to basically increase hotel occupancy. Part of our funding comes from hotel occupancy tax. Some exciting news that I can share with you on the international sales side. Recently, and probably some of you already know this, we booked the NCAA Men's Final Four for 2023. So that's really good news for Houston. And then probably some of you already know about this as well because it just happened this week. We just hosted the NCAA Women's Final Four we're bidding for 2021. They were here in Houston in the past few days, and we have great hopes that we can book that as well. Another conference that is coming up, and this is very important, I think, because it has to do a lot with Mexico, is the World Petroleum Congress. It's going to be here the first week of December of 2020. And believe me, I mean, time flies, so you need to be prepared for that. We're expecting to have 12,000 attendees, among them 500 CEOs of the top energy companies. We're going to have also with us heads of states, prime ministers, even members of royalty. And so we need to be prepared for that, just put it on your calendars. And then on the tourism side as well, we just launched the Spanish website that is called holahouston.com. So I invite you to take a look at it. It's everything in Spanish, in Espanol, and it's great news for Houston. I'm going to show you a video basically about Houston, of course, that just came out recently. And you can see this video in 12 different languages. Among them, you have the most important ones that, in which we receive visitors, of course. Among them, in addition to Spanish, we have Chinese as well. We have it in French. We have it in several languages. I'm going to tell you a little more: German, Chinese, Arabic, Korean, Vietnamese, Japanese, and Portuguese. So hopefully you enjoy it. Thank you.
Welcome to Houston, a city that inspires. Come visit us and find out where the inspiration leads you.
The president of our chamber, Julie, who welcomed you today, travels with Houston First continuously. She was just in Mexico to help promote Houston as a destination to come and do business. Julie did not mention she also has her own company, Terania Travel, who handles inbound conventions, groups, and luxury type travel. So I know she doesn't mention that today, but I'll mention that. So if you have any inbound groups that are coming here, anywhere in Texas actually, right, Julie?
Yes. Anywhere in Texas.
And hopefully they'll travel on the right airline. Guess who that is? Anna Simmons represents United Airlines. Anna, would you come up and say just a couple of words, please, and what's going on with United? Anything new?
Thank you, Pete. If I've not met you, my name's Anna Maria Simmons with United Airlines. I'm the planning manager handling Latin America as well as Asia, but I'm also the vice president of the Mexican Chamber of Commerce. With Latin America here in Houston being the hub, Houston is very important to us. And we do have some exciting news. If you haven't already seen it, if you're not a Mileage Plus member, please become one today. It's very important. I'm going to show you a real quick video and basically on how you can earn miles. So who doesn't want to win miles? So everybody enrolled to be a Mileage Plus member, we'll go ahead and show the video.
What would you do if you had 1,000,000 miles?
how they can win 1,000,000 miles? You go to that website, it says united.com/journey. And what it is you write a story and take pictures of one of the trips that you've enjoyed, and then what you would do with 1,000,000 miles. So thank you very much, United, again, for being one of our sponsors today. We have one more video. Thank you, United. I'm going to give a little update on the president-elect, as he's called, AMLO, in just a minute. But after this, we're going to have some question and answer. We've got one more video for you. We're going to have a question and answer. And I'm going to invite Gil and Tony to be part of that. We've got mics around the room, so if you have questions on NAFTA, on Mexico, on Texas, I hope that you're preparing them right now. But we will also have some surprises for you. Many of you got a blue ticket. If you did not get a blue ticket when you came in, get that blue ticket. We've got a couple of surprises for you as well. So with that, could we show Healing with Love, for Love video? Excellent therapy. Thank you very much for hosting us today, for hosting your table and being part of our luncheon. Actually, I think I'm going to be going to one of those. After NAFTA has now been approved, I think I'm going to go get some therapy myself. You know, let me give you a little bit of update on what we can expect. And this is a perspective of many people, including a recent meeting that we just had with the Consul General of Mexico. But as you know, this is a new party that is coming to take office. Something that had never happened before happened either last night or this morning. And that was the current president with all of his cabinet and the president-elect with all of his cabinet. He's got his cabinet already. We still have cabinet positions missing here. They got together in a joint meeting, a public meeting, and said that they vowed to work together to create a good transition. Many Latin American leaders have called Mexico to ask, how did you do this so peacefully? How come there was no, what we usually see in this country and in a lot of places in the world? And it's because the current party chose to, and let me mention this, Manuel Lopez Obrador was former PRI. He was PRI for 20 years. So he knows the party very, very well. And he says, you know, what we have to do is work together. We have to work in a united way to have this country prosper. And he has already made a claim that he will not change the energy reform of 2013. Can you believe it's now been 5 years that that energy reform is in place, and there's still things going on, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So he favors a very peaceful transition. So he wants to work together with the other parties, and as you know, his party is a combination of parties. But he's already stated his energy strategy in oil, gas, and electricity. He does plan, you know, for the next several years during his mandate. In the first 2 years, he will immediately put in $26 billion in investment in the oil and gas industry. And there'll be a little bit of breakdown. But the first year alone will be $4 billion right off the top for exploration as well as production of oil wells. The idea is to increase the production to 600,000 barrels a day. And they hope to reach that by their second year term. In the first year, he's also going to build new refineries, 6 new refineries. Well, first he has to upgrade several of them because they're only operating at about 30% capacity. One of the reasons Mexico sends its crude oil to the ship channel here in Houston is so that we can refine it and send it back to them. It's good business for Houston, but as their refining productivity improves, their process improves, we could see less and less of that. But I highly doubt it because Mexico today needs at least 800,000 gallons a day of gasoline, and they're not there yet. So I think we have an opportunity in the long term. And that's not to mention the natural gas, liquid gas. Today there are pipelines that are being built between Texas, well, all the way from Canada into Mexico to bring in natural gas. Most of the opening up airports to international commerce has proven to be very productive. I know, I helped open up 23 of those cities in Mexico, and I've seen those cities prosper. Ambassador Sosa and I were just in Querétaro, and to see United now, we started with 1 flight 10 years ago, now I have 4 flights a day. San Luis just announced another one. Houston used to only have 2 airlines, Air Mexico and Continental. Now there's 7 airlines flying out of 2 airports. So is that good for Houston? Is that good for Mexico? I think so. Other things that are going to happen in Mexico with in the oil and gas industry, they're getting ready to launch by January 2019. They will have what they call round 2 and round 3 and 7 farm outs in the hydrocarbons. There will be 37 offshore blocks in round 3.2, and then there'll be another 9 with 3.3. And by the way, they already have 20 interested parties of the 37 offshore blocks. So they still have 6 months to go to get the rest of them. And then the other 3.3 will actually be 9 onshore. First ones were offshore, and then the 9 onshore. So what our perspective from the U.S.-Mexico Chamber of Commerce, in my humble opinion, is that I think we will continue to see Mexico prosper. One of the things that does need to be addressed, we talk about it, I talk to the tourism offices and every government official that I can talk to in Mexico about that, and that is safety and security. There's a reason we have a huge Mexican community living here. And part of that is jobs in Mexico, and the other part is lack of security or need of more security. This is also on the priority list of the president-elect. How he goes about it, he has not determined his full strategy. But security in Mexico is good for all of us. It's good for the U.S. and it's good for Mexico. So that was one of the other items that I thought was very important when they were talking about NAFTA and working together, and that is security. And not only physical security, cybersecurity. For all of the companies that are in this room, cybersecurity is extremely important for all of us. And that's one of the things that our country needs to do and every country needs to do in protecting itself, and that's making investments in cyber, in how their systems operate. The CEO of our chamber is an advisor to Washington. He's been an advisor to the Bushes, the Clintons, all the way back from Reagan on cybersecurity measures. Al Zaponte is a former Army general, highly decorated, but his focus has been primarily on cybersecurity. And you know, you read every day you read the newspaper and you see government hacking and so forth. So this doesn't only go for governments, it goes for our businesses as well. Our chamber as well. We're in the process of redoing our website and so forth. You saw a little bit of our brochure, our new brochure there, but part of that is making sure that our website is extremely secure for our members. So that's something that I think Mexico is going to continue to work on, is security, and as well as making the things that they negotiate in NAFTA work. Our neighbor to the south is very important to us. It creates millions of jobs here. We talked about this earlier, and that is what would Houston be like without NAFTA? And it would be a very different Houston. It would be a very different Texas. I think it would be a poorer Texas and a poorer Houston. I don't think we want to go in that direction. But our job is to continue to educate people on the value of trade. And that will always be a primary focus of your Chamber of Commerce. With that, let's see, we have, I think, question and answer. So we have some, can you locate the microphones around the room? The international commerce has proven to be very productive. I know, I helped open up 23 of those cities in Mexico, and I've seen those cities prosper. Ambassador Sosa and I were just in Querétaro, and to see United now, we started with one flight 10 years ago, now I have 4 flights a day. San Luis just announced another one. Houston used to only have 2 airlines, Air Mexico and Continental. Now there's 7 airlines flying out of 2 airports. So is that good for Houston? Is that good for Mexico? I think so. Other things that are going to happen in Mexico with in the oil and gas industry, they're getting ready to launch by January 2019. They will have what they call round 2 and round 3 and 7 farm outs in the hydrocarbons. There will be 37 offshore blocks in round 3.2, and then there'll be another 9 with 3.3. And by the way, they already have 20 interested parties of the 37 offshore blocks. So they still have 6 months to go to get the rest of them. And then the other 3.3 will actually be 9 onshore. First ones were offshore, and then the 9 onshore. So what our perspective from the U.S.-Mexico Chamber of Commerce, in my humble opinion, is that I think we will continue to see Mexico prosper. One of the things that does need to be addressed, we talk about it, I talk to the tourism offices and every government official that I can talk to in Mexico about that, and that is safety and security. There's a reason we have a huge Mexican community living here. And part of that is jobs in Mexico, and the other part is lack of security or need of more security. This is also on the priority list of the president-elect. How he goes about it, he has not determined his full strategy. But security in Mexico is good for all of us. It's good for the U.S. and it's good for Mexico. So that was one of the other items that I thought was very important when they were talking about NAFTA and working together, and that is security. And not only physical security, cybersecurity. For all of the companies that are in this room, cybersecurity is extremely important for all of us. And that's one of the things that our country needs to do and every country needs to do in protecting itself, and that's making investments in cyber, in how their systems operate. The CEO of our chamber is an advisor to Washington. He's been an advisor to the Bushes, the Clintons, all the way back from Reagan on cybersecurity measures. Al Zaponte is a former Army general, highly decorated, but his focus has been primarily on cybersecurity. And you know, you read every day you read the newspaper and you see government hacking and so forth. So this doesn't only go for governments, it goes for our businesses as well. Our chamber as well. We're in the process of redoing our website and so forth. You saw a little bit of our brochure, our new brochure there, but part of that is making sure that our website is extremely secure for our members. So that's something that I think Mexico is going to continue to work on, is security, and as well as making the things that they negotiate in NAFTA work. Our neighbor to the south is very important to us. It creates millions of jobs here. We talked about this earlier, and that is what would Houston be like without NAFTA? And it would be a very different Houston. It would be a very different Texas. I think it would be a poorer Texas and a poorer Houston. I don't think we want to go in that direction. But our job is to continue to educate people on the value of trade. And that will always be a primary focus of your Chamber of Commerce. With that, let's see, we have, I think, question and answer. So we have some, can you locate the microphones around the room? Miguel, do we